Driven by social responsibility instead of harsh penalties, so far Japan seems to have dodged the worst of the pandemic. Even with a population 3 times Canada's, the death toll is less than an eighth.
Please excuse the construction outside. So, today I want to talk about something that's been kind of a big topic here in Japan, and that is Japan's approach to COVID 19. As you may see in the news, especially in the West, that Japan is praised for the way it's handled COVID, not locking down, not putting restrictions on its citizens, and so on. But I feel that Japan, the first approach, they didn't have many cases to begin with. They did lock down the country, and there's a bunch of, the articles about, long-term residents being unable to return to Japan for a short period of time due to not allowing foreign residents back in Japan. But I think that was big news, people who've lived in Japan for many years, who might have went back home, couldn't return to the country. And I understand that's a lot of stress, and you might have difficulties considering that your life is in Japan, but it's kind of a risk you take, and I knew that would happen to me, so I ended up staying here for the long term. But the way that Japan approached the coronavirus is kind of a bit weird. So unlike other countries like in Europe, Asia, and even America, they actually said people should go out and travel and go out and eat, which is quite different from the approach from Western countries. And of course, throughout the last 10 years, Japan has changed economically. Before, it wasn't a big tourist destination. There wasn't as many foreign tourists. However, nowadays, Japan is a tourist industry. They really rely on Chinese, Southeast Asian, and foreign tourists. Therefore, in order to keep the economy afloat, they needed to find ways to fill up these hotels and eateries because the 2020 Olympics were canceled. So what did they do? They offered 2 campaigns. One was Go to Eat and Go to Travel campaign, so 2 of them. The Go to Eat campaign was really interesting. So what you did is, using an online service, you book restaurants, and when you book the restaurant, you actually get 1,000 yen back. So every person you book a restaurant for, so let's say you book a restaurant course for 2,000 yen a person, and for every single person you book a course with, you get 1,000 yen back in return. So you get about 1,000 yen per person, and with the 1,000 yen you incur, you can use that money again to book another restaurant and use the points to pay for a meal. So that's how the government promoted going out to eat. But when it came to Go to Travel, it's a whole different situation. So what it was is that basically the Japanese government paid for its residents to travel in Japan. So what it is when you book a tour, a hotel and plane ticket with the travel agency like Expedia and Japanese domestic companies like HIS and JTB, they often they will give you 35% discount off the final cost. And on top of that, once you actually get to the destination and stay at the hotel, I believe for every 10,000 yen, or around equivalent of $100 it costs per night, you'll get 15% of that back in vouchers that you can use in the local area or the prefecture you're in, which could be towards restaurants, convenience stores. And that's how they did. So in total, you got about 50% back of your final trip. Well, this is when the shit hit the fan. So as you may know, Tokyo entered its second lockdown about 2 weeks, or end of last year. Eat and Go to Travel, a lot of people in Japan didn't feel like it was a big deal, COVID. They felt it was a foreign disease. But now, due to the UK having the new strain, and also it's spreading around the world, Japan decided they needed to lock down. And the thing that's quite interesting, if you actually do follow the numbers in Japan, the amount of tests conducted in Tokyo itself is the same amount as the amount of tests that have been conducted in my small town in Colorado. So I feel that they kind of have controlled the numbers prior to the lockdown. So once the lockdown came out, all of a sudden the number shot up from 500 all the way to 2,000 a day, and you can see the increase in the total number of PCR tests conducted to lead to these higher amount of numbers. And also, talking about how Japan handled COVID is also how they handle the situation with companies. So a lot of companies now, it's like with lockdown, it's kind of weird. You can still go to restaurants and eat out and stuff. Of course, you don't get lists of Go to Eat in that, but people are still pushing to eat out during lunch and so on when they do go to the office. But all restaurants now have to close at 8 because for some reason Japan believes that COVID only comes out at night, and people who go out at night are COVID people who catch COVID. So now all restaurants are required to close by 8 if they want to get money from the government or subsidies in order to stay open. And also, starting this week, I believe, that the last trains are also going to be earlier now. So that means that there's not going to be as many trains running late at night, which means what that means is more people are going to be on the train, which might lead to even a higher hike in cases, because it's kind of weird how like they believe by like shortening hours at restaurants is going to stop the spread of the virus, but in retrospect it's going to cause the virus to spread more, because more people are going to cram in there in a shorter amount of time, because they only have a small time frame to actually eat out and to do, you know, what they need to do at stores. And the same thing to be said at my gym. My gym is 24 hours, and before the lockdown in December, I always went when no one was there. Like usually no one was there between 5 and 8, because everybody was working or taking it easy. Everybody went in the morning, or they went in the evening, late at night. So everybody tried to avoid when other people were there. People were very cautious about when they went to the gym, because it's a very dangerous place to be. But starting with lockdown, my gym actually limited the hours between 5 and 8. So now everybody and their mom, literally everybody, goes between 5 p.m. and 8 p.m. So now it's crowded. So like now I think that she only comes out at night, so you better be careful because she's gonna come and get you. Japan believes that by cutting the hours, and if you don't work out after 8, you're not going to get COVID. It's the same thing with restaurants, right? Like you can eat at a restaurant during lunch, but if you eat dinner out, you're going to catch COVID. It's kind of like they believe like COVID's like the Rona or something. Like, so yesterday I was a bit interested. I always watch Japanese news while I'm at work. It's kind of something I do just to keep up with the news. And I always like to hear the Japanese point of view and the American point of view on certain subjects. But yesterday I heard this ridiculous thing.
東京大学の大沢幸夫教授の研究結果なんですが、提案しているのが Stay with Community というんですね。
今まで聞いたのとちょっと違いますよね。
はい。今
And as you can see, in Japan, in order to curb the coronavirus, instead of going to eat or go to travel, they have stay in community. So what this is it's not really an official thing yet, but I think it's what it's trying to say is that you, as long as you stay in your area, you will not spread coronavirus. I see the logic in this somewhat, but it doesn't mean everybody in your area is going to stay in their area. So for instance, like I live in the Nakanoku. So basically the article is saying, or this news story is saying that if I stay in Nakanoku and only meet people who live in Nakanoku, I don't have to worry about the risk of catching COVID. But if I meet someone from like Shibuya-ku, for instance, there might be a possibility I'll catch coronavirus. So it's better to meet people within your neighborhood, which I kind of find a bit weird. So I kind of find like it's kind of not, doesn't make any sense again. Like they're kind of like don't know how to deal with COVID. They're trying to have people go out, of course, and buy products because it's a consumer-run economy, but they also want to make sure COVID doesn't spread. So, and you know, I see a lot of people, especially people in the foreign community, friends of mine, who actually follow the Japanese news. They're like, well, if the Japanese news says it's okay, then it should be fine. I'm like, I understand that, but as an individual myself, and you know, I know lots of older people, and there's lots of old people who live around me. I don't want to take the risk to go out and get sick, and also when I come back to my area, I might go to a supermarket, spread it to someone else because I might not show symptoms of having COVID. And I don't want to sound like a complainer or someone who's talking bad about Japan. I really love my life here. It's just that, you know, it's good to tell the truth when it should be told. And a lockdown is good that we're in lockdown now. I think a lot of companies, especially in Japan, a lot of companies don't make the decision on their own to lock down. A lot of them really depend on the government to tell them what to do. And even my company, we were one of the first companies to allow remote work. But I have lots of friends who still had to go to work because the government wouldn't say to lock down or it's better to work from home. Society that they often listen to what the leader says and then start moving instead of thinking it for themselves and being like, okay, well, this COVID's happening and I need to think about my employees', you know, well-being, so we should all work at home. But instead, they really rely on what the government says. And on top of that, I think that a lot of Japanese corporations, even now, like with the lockdown, I think people have gotten some immune to like the numbers, and despite them getting higher and higher daily, they don't want to work from home. And a lot of, you know, of course, there's many, you know, Japan's still, you hear on many other channels, Japan's still very far behind when it comes to technology. A lot of companies still rely on fax machines, and a lot of companies do not have the technology in place to do remote work, and that's fine. But I think by having COVID and having people work from home and promoting remote work has really moved Japan in the future when it comes to work. And I think that maybe this will cause the Japanese way of working to change in the future. But I just kind of found this a bit of an interesting topic and I want to talk about it a bit. But yeah, I think COVID in Japan is a lot worse than what the foreign media is saying it is. It's not to the extent of the States, of course, but I think that it's not going to get better anytime soon. And it has to do a lot with the way politicians are running things and they don't know what they do. And it's typical, it takes them forever to do things. Well, thank you for my little rant, for listening to my rant today, and I'll see y'all later. Bye.